Okay, good morning, students. Welcome to another session of digital signal processing. So, in previous discussion, we discussed regarding few of the concepts which are pertaining to DSP, like Harvard architecture. So, what is it makes difference between the DSP processors and the micro processors or the microcontrollers? That is, how DSPs are different from the other processors. So, in pertaining to that discussion, we had discussion regarding what are the special features which are present in Harvard say the DSP processors like Harvard architecture, on-chip memory, then the barrel shifters, then the multipliers. So these are just few examples to name around. So that is what we had discussed in previous session. So going ahead, we started off with the discussion of the addressing modes. So pertaining to that, we actually started with the discussion related to TMS 320C54XX. So in which we saw what all things are present in this. That is the Harvard architecture, on-chip memory, then RAM, ROM, single access, dual access RAM. So these all things, and so this is what we had seen, and so few things, that is program address generation and data address generation, then ALU CPU, which is around 40 bit for this case, and one special thing is two accumulators are present which are of 40 bits. Then we had 17 by 17 multipliers. So these all things will be looking after one by one. And another thing is the address generation unit has to take care of the bit address generation, bit reversed address and the circular address. So those are special addressing what it has to take care of. So this is what your regular microprocessors and your DSP processors can be differentiated. So based on this, we can have some comparative analysis between the processors what we have. So in continuation with this aspect, let us start with the discussion of the bus architecture of TMS, say 320C 54XX. So in short, we'll be discussing it as 54XX for TMS or Texas Instruments. Okay. So here, the first thing to note down is it is having four pairs of 16-bit buses. So it is four pairs, okay, which is of 16 bits each. So 16-bit buses are present in the 54XX architecture. So in which one of the pair, one of each this thing. So in each pair we have two this thing. So in which one will be used for address and the other one will be used for data. So that is how it goes around. So each pair is consisting of one address bus and one data bus. So that is how it goes around. So one bus in each pair is for accessing the address and the other one is for accessing the data. So this is how it goes around in case of the architecture. So again, as we specified, right, that 54XX is having how much? Program, one program memory, and it is having three data memory. It is having three data memory. So here we can see this, that based on that you have bus pair for program, so which is termed as PAB and PB. So PAB stands for program address bus, and this is just the program bus which will be used for the data. Okay, and then so which actually is related to fetching of the instruction and then going ahead. Okay, so since that is program this thing, it is related to instruction fetch and the other operations which are performed using the instruction. So which will be the instruction will be stored in the program memory. So these two buses will be utilized for that purpose. Then we have three data memories. So each data memory is having a pair of buses. So therefore you have three data buses in this case. So there are three data buses and each data bus is a pair of data buses. So here we have CAB, CB, DAB, DB, and EAB, EB. So it is so C, D, and E are pertaining to the data memories. So you have data. EB means again address bus, and only if it is specified, say CB, DB, or EB, it is for the data bus. So each of the three memory locations are having two separate buses each. So you can see that, and each of 16 bits. So you can see that you are having say total 4 pairs. You are having total 4 pairs, 1 pair for the program and 6 pairs for the data. So here, and out of that, this thing is utilized for address, one is utilized for the data. So this is how it goes around. Now here again, I specified in the discussion. I specified in the discussion that, so if I am having 3 memories, so let me call it in the same way, say C, this is C, D, and E. So these are the 3 things. Now what happens is, this is having 2 buses, which is termed as CAB and CB. Similarly, this is having DAB and DB, and this is having EAB and EB. So here, what is happening is these two, C and D, if I specify C and D, a program memory, sorry, a data memory. These are the data memories. So these data memories are basically used to fetch the operands from this location. So it will be used to fetch the operands. Okay, it will be used to fetch. Say for example, you will be fetching say x1 from here, and you will be fetching x2 from here. Just to simplify, otherwise it will be confusing. Actually, you'll be fetching, we read it as a and b, something in this kind. So one operand is say x1 and the other operand is x2. So these are the 2 things what will be accessing. Basically, we'll be specifying the registers and other steps. So just for simplicity, I'm just specifying it as x1 and x2. So these are two operands which I'll be fetching from these 2 locations. So C and D are used for that purpose. C and D are used for that purpose. And the third one which is present is present over here is, it is utilized to store the result of these two. Say, for example, I am performing x1 plus x2, and I'll be getting the result of in x3. So this result will be stored in this location. So here what I'm doing, I am writing into the memory. I'm writing into the memory. And here what I'm doing, I'm reading from the memory. I'm reading from the memory. So this is what is happening in these 2 cases. So here the C and D, that is using CAB and CB, DAB and DB, DAB and DB, I'll be accessing the operands from this. That is, I'll be reading the operands. And the result of that will be stored in the other data memory which is indicated with E. Okay, using the buses EAB and EB. So again, remember A stands in these cases, right? EAB and other stuffs. A stands here for the address. That is in, say, for example, if I'm writing EAB, right? Here A stands for the address, and if I specify it as EB, it is only for the data. Okay. So this is how it goes around in case of the bus architecture, how the buses are being utilized. So that is what is specified here. The pairs CAB and CB are used to read data from the memory. That is what is specified in the previous, a previous slide. So next, here we can see that the other pair, EAB and EB, actually carries the result, and that is being written into the memory. That is being written into the memory. So here, because of this architecture, what happens is I'll be able to fetch an instruction, fetch two operands, fetch 2 operands, and then at the same time operate and get the results and store that result using these buses into the memory. So in one instruction cycle itself, I'll be able to perform all these things. So this is how the DSP actually increases the execution speed and provides the result at a very faster rate. So then along with that, other hardwares also come into play. So this is how it goes around for 54XX. Then apart from this, using these address buses, what we can do is we can go and access the auxiliary registers also, which are termed as AR AU and AR AU 0 and 1. So again, we can see that we have to generate the addresses. So I want to store the result. So what is the address where I have to store this. So that will be generated by the data address generation block, DAGen block. So similarly, if I want to fetch something from the program memory, I should know where it is. So I should know what is the address of that instruction. So that is being generated by the program address generation, that is PAGEN block. So here I think we have it. Okay. So here we have. So here you can see that this is one program address bus. This is program data bus. So similarly, we have the others. Okay. So for C, D, and E. Okay. So these are the buses which are available. So you can see that one pair for each. Okay. One pair for each. So as discussed, what we have C and D, that is CAB, CB, DAB, and DB are utilized for what? Reading the instructions from the memory. And this one will be helpful for writing the result into the memory. Then also you can access the peripheral interfaces which are present. So memory and the external interface can be accessed via these buses. So this is the bus architecture. And based on that, again, we have program address generation block and data address generation block. So here, when we speak of program address generation, different instructions and different registers come into play. The most common, what we know is the program counter. So here, that is what it pertains to. So based on that, again, we go and fetch. So again, we have different this things. So as we go ahead, we'll be discussing all these things. So then apart from that, in data address generation, since we are able to access two data at same time, we can make use of this auxiliary registers and access those data each. We can access those data. So this is how we go around with the bus architecture of the 54XX Texas instrument. So then apart from that, if you just look around, you can see that ALU, which is 40-bit, then some barrel shifter is specified, some compare, TRB, TC. So again, pertaining to, say here we have T, then we have AB, which are the accumulators. T is the temporary resistor. So A and B are again 40 bits. So these are just a few things which are specified over here. So what are their uses will be getting to know in further discussion. So here you can see that, remember, you have two accumulators. So accumulators in the 54XX series of processors are B and A and B are the accumulators. A and B are the accumulators. So remaining all they are identified. So these all things, if you just see, these are the buses which are pertaining to that. Then you have MAC unit. Then S is relevant to barrel shifter. So just to have a shorthand notation. So they are making use of these representations. So in your say architecture, what they do is instead of specifying barrel shifter everywhere, they'll just specify that this is the output of S or this is from the S. So it implies that there is a barrel shifter associated with this. So this is how I go read it. So T is actually pertaining to the temporary register. So T actually has many uses over there. Suppose if I am using it with the barrel shifter, T helps us in associating with how many shifts you want to perform. So that value is stored in the T register, and that is given to the barrel shifter. That is given to the barrel shifter. And then based on that value, the shifting happens either towards the left or towards the right. So that again we'll be discussing further. Then ALU, in short, they sometimes represent it as ALU itself, or sometimes they use the representation as U. So here U implies that this is the output from the ALU, or this is relevant to the ALU parameter. So this is how they go around. Okay, then so these are just shorthand notations which they are using over here for representation. So this is our main concentration was related to this bus architecture. So based on whether it is program, this runs around where it will be moving ahead. Now here another thing to remember is you can see that you have some things which are coming from the data bus, even though if this is relevant to the program, this thing, right? Because once you fetch an instruction, program bus is free. Once you fetch an instruction, program bus is free. So I can utilize that program bus for say fetching or storing the results. I can use it for that purpose also. So that is why you can see that arrows are present over here. But here you can see that in address generation, none of them are going to the program this thing, the program buses. You can see that it is not going to program buses because these are specifically relevant to that. And what happens is they are not free when they're fetching the data from the memory. Only the program bus can be free once only the instruction has been fetched. So instruction is, for example, you're writing the instruction as add. So once you fetch the instruction, you get to know that, okay, you have to add some numbers. So it may be 10 numbers, 20 numbers. So you get to know that, okay, I have to add the numbers. Then what I do is after that, the program bus becomes free. So therefore I can utilize this program bus for the remaining aspects. That is why it is having access from these things. Okay. So this is how you have to read it around. So these are just a few things pertaining to the registers. That is, sorry, the bus architecture of 54XX processor. So next, pertaining to this discussion, we have we had discussion regarding the bus architecture. Now let us discuss what all things are present in the CPU. So in the 54XX, we have multiple things which are present in the CPU. The first thing what we have to note down is how many bits it will be operating on. So CPU operates on 40-bit. So it is having a 40-bit arithmetic logic unit. Then it is having two operands, which are two accumulators, which are named as A and B in this case. Then apart from that, we have different features which are present over there. So here you can see what we have is we have two accumulators A and B. We have something called as T, which is actually a temporary register. Then some data which is being fetched from the C location. Okay, that is from the memory C. Then this is the data which is pertaining to the other program memory, that is C and D. Then we have so specified as S. So as I mentioned, S stands for the output of the shifter, barrel shifter. So S is associated with the barrel shifter. So you have to remember these things. So and the shifter is around 40-bit. This thing shifter operates on these aspects. Now here, what happens is one special thing what we have to remember out is that what is the purpose of this p-value over here? What is the purpose? So here what happens is when you're performing some operation using the ALU between say you're adding or you're multiplying, what happens is when you're multiplying say 2-bit numbers, so the result can be around say 3 bits. If I'm multiplying just 2-bit numbers, the result can be maximum of say 2 times n, that is maximum of 4 bits, maximum of 4 bits. So what is happening is accumulator, say for example, accumulator is 2-bit, both the accumulators, but you are multiplying them, the result is 4 bits. So how do I store that 2 extra bits? So those 2 extra bits or the redundant bits, what we generally call, sometimes we specify it as redundant bits. So what we generally call those things, those are stored in your temporary register. So why that becomes necessary is now, as we had discussed in a few of the sessions, right? Suppose I am multiplying two numbers and I'll be getting a number which is more than this thing. So it will be, say, for example, um, maximum it can be 4 bits and 2 bits extra, which is present over there. So this one I'll be storing in the temporary register. Now, why this becomes important is prior to multiplication, you might have done scaling. Might have done scaling. So prior to multiplication. So if that scaling is done and then it is utilized, then the result also has to be scaled back. Result also has to be scaled back. Suppose if I discard these bits and then only utilize these bits, then what is happening is you are losing this information, which is actually pertaining to your MS bits. So I am losing this information. So that has to be avoided. That has to be avoided in such cases. Okay. So if you're performing scaling before performing the operation, you should take care that you say perform a similar scaling on the overall result prior to reading it. Otherwise, what happens is you'll be reading wrong information, or you'll be reading the information which is having all wrong, which is having some information which is erroneous, which is erroneous. So how do I cater to this? I cater to this by using the temporary register. So this information is stored in the temporary register. And when scaling, what I can do is I can utilize these data which is present in this temporary register and go ahead with the scaling purpose. So this is how it goes around. So we should be careful when we are performing these things. So this is one use of the temporary register. So when I'm multiplying, the result goes out of range. So that excess information which is there, say in the MS bit, I go and store it in the temporary register. So if I have performed some scaling operation prior to multiplication, then I have to perform the scaling operation on the result after multiplication. So if I do this, then I'll be getting a result which is having very less error. Otherwise, what happens is the error will be increased. Error will be increased. So that is what I try to achieve. So this is one another purpose of for the T register, and another purpose I had specified was its use in the barrel shifter. So it stores the information pertaining to how many shifts you want to perform. So that information can be stored in the T register, and that can be utilized to perform the shifts in the barrel shifter. So this is the purpose relevant to the temporary register. Okay. So this is how the central processing unit appears in this case. So here, since we are speaking of the entire ALU, right? ALU again, it is you can see that it is providing you a result of 40 bits. So it is a 40-bit ALU. Then along with this, what it does is since ALU will be having say adder, multiplier, and other stuffs, so we should have these informations also. That is, we'll be having a barrel shifter, which will be shifting pertaining to the 40 bits. That is the barrel shifter which is present over here. So again, in coming slides, we'll be discussing again regarding this barrel shifter. So how many shifts are possible in which direction, how many bits, and in the other direction, how many bits. Then we have a multiplier which is actually of 17 by 17. Then we have a adder which performs addition on the 40-bit information. So we have 40-bit adder. Then we have one special this thing what we call what they call it as CSSU, that is the compare, select, and store. So this actually becomes handy when you're performing math kind of operations. So there, what you are having, you have to select the data, multiply it with the previous result, and then store that information. So you have to select it, compare it, store it. So something of this kind. So that is what compare, select, and store unit will be helpful. So for these kind of informations. Then exponent encoder. So this can be utilized. This will be utilized for say fractional additions or mathematical operations what we are performing. For example, if we are adding two numbers, say I'll be writing it as 1 into 10 raised to minus 1 plus 2 into 10 raised to 0. So here what is happening is both the exponents are different. So prior to addition, I have to make both equal. So I can write it as 0.1 into 10 raised to 0 plus 2 into 10 raised to 0. So now I can add these two, that is mantissa part and the exponent part. Exponent part becomes common. So 2.1 into 10 raised to 3. So for such kind of operations, I can go for the exponent EXP kind of encoding, exponent encoder. So which is basically again it is nothing but it is scaling in this case, scaling of the exponent value in your fractional numbers. Okay. So this is what it does. Then apart from that, since you have to fetch the data, right? You should know what is the location. You should know what is the location where the data is. Then even some of the operations pertaining to address generation for program, it also requires say mathematical operations. Say I have an instruction. Say I have instruction at location 1. Then next instruction will be at location 2. So here, for example, your program counter is 1. So next instruction, what I do is I do PC plus 1. So it will be going and accessing this. So here, what is happening is you're performing mathematical operations on the program counter. So in this case also what happens is on the data which is being generated by the program address generator has to be performed using the ALU. You can either have a same ALU or they can have separate ALUs. So here we are discussing in these things. So here pertaining to that, we have these all aspects, that is data address generation and program address generation unit. So they have these things which will be utilizing the feature of this CPU and generating the address. So all keys have to be taken. Again, if it is a bit reverse addressing, how the operation goes around. If it is circular addressing, how the operation goes around for accessing that address. So those all things. And we had discussed in the previous sessions that how the registers will be utilized. For example, the EAR registers and the SAR register, start address register and address register, then how the modulo operation will be performed in order to keep that address which is being generated in the same block, that is SAR and the EAR block. So those all things also come into picture here. Now, always remember that when you're performing mathematical operations, right, you perform it in it using 2's complement. Because what happens is, suppose, for example, if I just consider, say I have two numbers in which one I am having -2 and the other I am having it as +2. So these are the two numbers which I'll be multiplying and the result is -4. So, but what happens in this case is in your when you're dealing with binary numbers, right? You don't have any facility to store this number sign, store this sign. So this sign in a sign numbers, what they do is they store it using the MS bit. They store it using the MS bit. And when you're doing this, and if you're just using directly the number, then you have to perform some operation and get the original result, that is -4. So you should take care of all these things, how it is done. So that the one of the best option, what you do is, since it is a binary number, you go for 2's complement. Go for 2's complement representation of these numbers. So you take 2's complement of these numbers. So 2's complement takes care of the sign also, which will be in the MS bit. It will take care of sign itself. So once you get the result, you check whether the result is in the 2's complement form and see whether the intended result is obtained or not. So this is how you go around for the multiplication aspect. So this is why you perform, why the ALUs, not only in DSP, also in even in your microcontroller, the majority of the operations will be done using the 2's complement arithmetic. Okay. So that's why 2's complement comes handy when we are performing the mathematical operations. So this is the importance of 2's complement, because sign, I cannot store it. I cannot store sign in memory location. I can either store 0 or I can either store 1. So how do I perform that operation? I convert this into 2's complement and then go ahead with the addition. Suppose if I don't convert it into 2's complement, then the complications increase, because if you're performing it using 1's complement, if you're performing it using, say, without complementing the things, then it becomes tedious. So you should be taking care of different aspects also over there. So that's why 2's complement comes handy over in such cases. So this is what ALU looks for. Then apart from that, you have operations which are done in Boolean this thing, and you can perform at the bit levels. For example, what does this imply is, suppose you have some information and I want to check out what is this bit. So I access this bit and I want to perform some ANDing operation with some flag register. Say I want to check out some flag register. So I can perform bit by bit operation. So bit level instructions are also present. So that is what it, and if I just compare it and I'll be getting a Boolean result, say true or false, that is true or false, that is 1 or 0 kind of thing. Okay. So that is what is happening in this case. So we have bit level Boolean operations which are permitted. And when you're doing these things, right, you can perform it on 16, 32 or 42 bit words. So that is what he specifies for 54XX Texas series. Then here, what we have is the ALU performs on 40-bit this thing, so it can perform as a two separate ALUs which operate on 16 bits each. So this ALU can operate as two ALUs which can perform the operations on two 16 bits. It can perform operation on two 16 bits. And generally, we come across sometimes the term as the guard bits. So those are also taken care. That's why the 40-bit word comes over here. So it is, if I just check over here, ALU is 40-bit, and this I can make it act as a two ALUs. I can make it act as a two ALUs in which one is of 16-bit and the other one is of 16 bits. So this is how I can obtain parallel operation using the ALU. So mathematical operations can be performed in parallel kind of thing. So which again increases the execution of the DSP architecture. So this is how it goes around. Okay. Then we have accumulators which are there, which will be storing the intermediate results. It will be either from the multiplier or the adder. So those results will be stored in this case. So that is why this arrow is shown over here. That is, this indicates that these are the outputs of this entire block. These are the outputs pertaining to this block. So this is how it will be going ahead. So next you have so what are the guard bits and what are the higher order and lower order bits in the accumulators? So here this accumulator is divided into three parts. It is divided into three parts, whether it is A or B, all are divided into three parts. So first one is pertaining to the guard bits, next one is pertaining to the higher order bits, and last one is pertaining to the lower order bits. So it is basically actually 32 and 8 bits are extra for guard bits. So if you just look at this one, so if I start numbering, if I come to this part, see what I'll do is, so I'll just confirm it as in this form. So this is for guard bits, this is for higher order bits, this is for lower order bits. So if I start the numbering indexing from this point, right, up to 40 bits, it implies 0 to 29. So this will be the last bit which will be pertaining to the 40th bit. So here what happens is, here I have 8 bits as guard bits, 8 bits as guard bits. So here what happens is, this will be 32. So if I just estimate 32, 30, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39. So from 32 to 39. So it forms up to 8 bits. So 8 bits are provided as guard bits in the accumulator. And then what happens is the remaining are how much? 40 minus 8 is 32. So what happens is 16 bits higher order bits and 16 bits lower order bits. So here 16 bits, here it will be from 0 to 15. So these bits will be pertaining to the 16 bits of this lower order bit. And from the next this thing, what you have 16 to 31. So this will be the next 16 bits which represent the higher order bits. It represents the higher order bits. So this is how the accumulator is represented. So here we have guard bits, which is 32 to 39. Then we have higher order bits, which is 31 to 16. That is what I have specified over here, 31 to 16, and then 15 to 0. And the lower order bits, which are 15 to 0. So this is, and we can access these things in individually. Only lower order 16 bits I want, I can access. Only upper order, higher order I want, I can access. If I want only the guard bits, I can access. So this is how it goes around. I can access and store the results in this form. Then apart from that you have the barrel shifter, which actually performs shifting of over the 40 bits. But how that shifting is done is, it is dependent on, say here, so here we have, this is actually pertaining to the barrel shifter. Okay, still we are discussing regarding the ALU, SIP ALU. So here T, what it specifies, it specifies that minus 16 through 31 range. So that is, barrel shifter is able to perform this operation. So what does this imply is, it is able to shift towards left from 0 to 32 bits, and it is able to shift from right from 0 to 16 bits. So that is how it is read. This is how you read it. So the barrel shifter in case of 54 XX series, right? It is able to perform shifting of say 32 bits, up to 32 bits in left, and shifting of say if it is 16, so shifting of 16 bits into the right. So this is how it goes around. So barrel shifter is capable of performing these shift operations. So that is what he has specified in this case. That is the shifter which is present in the DSP, right? You can have left shift of 0 to 51 bits and a right shift of 0 to 16 bits of whatever input you have specified. Now, where is this shift information stored? The shift information is stored in the temporary register. It can be stored in the temporary register, or it can be given in the shift count field of the shift register. So these are the this thing which we can access in order to identify how many shifts will be performed. Okay. So this is how it goes around. Now another thing to when we are shifting, right? When we shift, say either to left or right, what should be filled in the other locations? That is, if you're shifting, for example, I'm just taking this. Suppose I have this information. I want to shift it towards left. Say I'll be shifting 2 bits. Say let me assume that this is the information. So if I'm shifting it 2 bits towards the left, then what should be filled in the other this thing? So one will be coming over here. So this here, and this here. These two go out. So what should be filled in the others? If you're performing left shift, you'll be filling it up with the zeros. You'll be filling it up with the zeros. And the same thing if I perform a right shift. If I perform a right shift, what happens is this information set by 2 bits, I'm shifting it. This information sits here, this information sits here, and this information sits here. So what should be filled here? So it again depends. Generally, what is intended is you store the sign bit, because this is a sign bit in this case. So you store the sign bit in those locations what you have shifted. So this is how it goes around in this case. Okay. So that is what you have specified. The LS bits are filled with zeros when you're performing one kind of shift, and the MS bits are filled with 0 or with the sign extended, depending on what type of data is present over there, or what kind of, whether it is signed data or unsigned data. So it depends on those things. Okay. So this is how it goes around with the CPU. Okay. Then apart from that, you have a 17 by 17 2's complement multiplier, which is included with the 40-bit adder, which is present over there. So because of this, in one instruction itself, we'll be able to perform the MAC operation. Not exactly in the one cycle itself, one instruction cycle, you will be able to perform it. So the entire MAC operation utilizing this, say, multiplier and the adder. So this is all pertaining to the shifters. So here that is what they have specified. So you have two data from the memory location C and D. You have two accumulator information. So you can see that these all things are present, and how the sign has to be controlled when you're shifting it. If you're using unsigned numbers, if you're shifting it towards the right, you store 0 in the MS bit. If you're shifting it towards the left, you store 0 in the LS bits. So that is how you are performing, and how many shifts are being performed is controlled by the temporary register. Whether you want to shift right or whether you want to shift left is controlled by this case. Then apart from that, even in ST1, that is the shift register information is also stored in which how many bits have to be shifted is also stored in another register, that is the status register for T1 ST1. So these are just a few things to name around. Okay. Then we have the multiplier and the adder unit. So here we can see that We have data from the temporary, we have data from A, we have data from the program bus, then we have the data from the other two buses. So here data from both the accumulators will be present. So here you are using the ALU, which is adder, which is of 40 bits. So then thus here you are performing basically the multiplier and the accumulation part. Multiply and the accumulation part. You can perform that operation. Over here. So this is how it goes around. This is how it goes around. Okay. So these are just a few things to discuss around. Then we have the compare, select, and store unit, that is CSSU, which is basically used to accelerate the add, compare, and the select operation. So which is observed in the majority of the encoding algorithms which are being utilized, say for the Viterbi algorithm as he has specified over here. So these are just a few things to go around with the architecture of the multiplier and adder, which is used in 54XX. So then apart from that, coming to the last part, we have the internal memory and the memory mapped registered. So you should know what is meant by memory mapped and IO mapped. So memory mapped implies that if you are using some external memory, that memory will be treated as though it is part of the memory with that processor itself. So access will be in the same form as you are writing the code. You are not accessing it via the ports and other stuffs. You are accessing it, but you are accessing it in as though it is part of the memory, and you're directly using the same memory fetch or data fetch operations what you are using when you're without the external memory. So IO map memory, what happens is that is treated as a separate memory itself, and then you'll be using some special instructions for storing the data and accessing the data over there. You'll be using the ports also to access that information. So these are just a few things to name around. So in memory, again, you have on chip and off chip, and again in that you have RAM and ROM. So apart from that, again, you can have dual access and single access RAMs. So again, in this, you have some concept termed as paging. It is termed as paging. So here we have the program, the memory which is related over here. So here, one thing to remember is the on-chip RAM memory can be organized in the pages. So each page will be containing of 128 words. So one word is identified as one location. So in these words, what happens is you'll be storing some register information and some other information, say the registers pertaining to the CPU, registers pertaining to the IO operations. So those all things you'll be looking after. So that is you have CPU registers, and you have another one termed as the IO registers. So those all things you'll be storing over here. So here, so that is what he specifies. So here we can see that the internal memory mapped registers for the architecture 54XX. So these are the things which are present. Each will be having one specific. So this is actually stored on page zero. Page zero. So the 128 words are filled with this one. And along with that, we have the peripheral registers over here. So these are just few things to discuss around. So we'll be continuing with this part in next session also.